So, folks, just to let you know, we have obviously some strategic priorities. So we just basically put forward these kind of welcome statements, we call them. We have split them into geographical impact and then kind of thematic impact. We're just basically saying within the fund this year, we welcome applications coming from these areas. We've got these here as welcome statements, so don't be thinking, well, I don't work in these areas, is it going to go against me? No. And then there's kind of a thing around thematic impact. So first of all, we're just talking about work which supports and develops the next generation of good relations practitioners. Okay, so as this relates to emerging challenges such as sustainability, the environment, poverty, the changing nature of communities and good relations from a global perspective, it's getting this balance between those geographic kind of welcome statements but then these kind of thematic, and it's saying, look, it's for you to identify but really well, articulate that really well within your application forms why you think this is a need that needs to be addressed.
I'm going to talk about the assessment process and the application process. In order for you to get a grant, we want to make sure that you can manage public money okay. What we do when we receive your application is do initial eligibility check, and that will consist of whether your organisation can legally operate in Northern Ireland. Is the organisation financially viable? And we check that through your management accounts as well as your audited accounts. We also look at, is there a clear demonstration that robust financial and reporting systems are in place? We also check that you have an adequate community relations policy or good relations policy or a equal opportunities policy, any of those three. We also check, has the applicant completed the form fully and provided all the correct documentation as required? And again, that's really important, because if you leave a question blank or you haven't submitted a form, that will initially put you out of the process. And also, does the work described in the applicant's work plan meet the specific remit of the funding programme? And are the proposed beneficiaries all in Northern Ireland? This fund is primarily for salaries and then some additional running costs to go alongside to help with the running of the organisation. But the main focus will be on salaries only, and we will fund up to 90% of salary costs, and we will expect you to be able to fund the remaining 10%, and that can either be through another funder or your own reserves. So as well as that, we want the posts to primarily concentrate on community relations related activity. You know, we're not funding everybody in the organisation. You know, they do have to have a primary community relations role. Obviously, we will fund maybe some finance assistance within the organisation as a finance officer. But again, try and be really realistic how much time that finance officer spends on the core funding financial reports and things like that. We also do associated running costs. Now, the headings in the application form are the only headings that we will fund mileage for the worker, and we pay that at 45p per mile. Rent, heat and light, telephone, but it's landline costs only, insurance and audit costs. And also this year that is new is that we will only fund up to 25% of the total grant on running costs. So 75% of the grant will go on salaries, up to 25% is for running costs only. So a part of the salary is paid employees. So we don't fund sessional workers or freelance staff or facilitators coming in to run a one-off thing. It has to be staff through the PAYE system. We don't fund work which falls within the remit of other funders. We don't fund proposals submitted by individuals or work outside Northern Ireland. The scheme will not support the running costs of campaigns to support political activities or to lobby for or against particular pieces of legislation. We don't fund capital costs or purchase of equipment or project delivery costs. For project delivery costs, we do have our small grants programme, so you may wish to look at that in addition to the core funds. Just because you're in receipt of one fund doesn't mean you can't get from the small grants programme as well. So there's a couple of things that we look at when we're assessing. So we assess the application and the materials provided, you know, all your additional documentation, all your evidence that you may attach, you know, like consultation, findings, research reports that you may have, anything like that. We also do a financial analysis and scrutiny, and that involves actually sending your accounts out to an external accountant and they will go through both your audited accounts and your management accounts. And if you're already an applicant or a grantee of ours, we will maybe look also at any significant findings from reviews of previous funds that you've had from us. Our percentage is how we assess. 60% of your application score will go towards the methodology and outcomes. So this is where the bulk of your marks are going. So it's really important to get that part right. We give 20% towards value for money, and we give 10% towards organisational experience and your track record, and then 10% towards your governance, how you're set up, and the structure of your organisation as such. So in terms of methodology, we look at the alignment of outcomes with our strategic aim or priorities and the welcome assessments. And also tied into that will be how you fit in within the TBUC programme and also all the other strategies, and how it all links together. And all those strategies can be found on our website, on the application portal. There's all links to each one of them. Fit with the programme remit. So obviously that it's about the sectarianism element and how you're backing that up with your needs analysis. A detailed methodology provided for carrying out the work plan, but we also would like you to provide us with a quarter by quarter breakdown of the work. So before you might only have sort of given us what you're going to do in 1 year, we would like that further broken down into quarter by quarter, what you're how you're going to approach the work plan and aim to achieve that. Value for money is about cost, must be proportionate to the outcomes that will be achieved. And also planned activity is strategic rather than one-off or reactive work. And that's very important that, that you have a strategic plan and what you're applying for also complements what's in your strategic plan. So, and in terms of organisation experience and track record, we look at evidence of skills, experience, outcomes-based work and development work in a complex environment. Just looking at maybe previous applications, we could even check with other funders and things like that, that your application demonstrates understanding of the policy and contextual issues within the community relations sector. So like I say, that you're aware of all the strategies out there and how your organisation and project and work that you do fits into that. And compliance, key issues to take account from previous CRC fund awards and other funders. And the governance and finance, as I said, we do a financial scrutiny, and you need to be able to demonstrate that you can provide the match funding, either through your own funds or another funder, and that you have good relations policies in place. The next part is we're going to talk you through our application, okay? All your strategies and things, so there's your core funding programme guidelines, click here. And for the TBUC strategy, you click there, and there's another strategic priorities and outcomes, click here. These are the welcome statements. But prior to even getting an application form, when you go onto our website, which is www.nicrc.org.uk, you can either go to the application portal or go to the funding tab at the top and then select core fund. And then you need to, when you go into that portal, you will need to fill out a Section 75 monitoring form for legal purposes. So you'll fill that out first, and then once you've completed that, you will get a link to your email that you've provided, and there will be the link to the application form. And from there, you can go back and forth. You don't have to complete it all in one sitting. So you just save it as you go along, and you can come back to it as many times as you want through that link that you've been sent by email. Once you've completed your application form, you can submit it, and then say you realise, oh, I've forgotten to fill out something really important or whatever, you can also withdraw your application form again prior to the deadline. That's really important. You can make all the edits you want and resubmit, but once the deadline has come and passed, you can't resubmit it or make any changes, okay? So that's really important to know that. And once you do submit your application, you will get another email to say that you've submit it, and you'll be given a unique reference number as well. So anytime then you're liaising with us, if you can then also give us the reference so we can access your form quickly. So in terms of the application, so that's your organisation, we ask for you to fill out your name, your contact details, your phone number, your email. What we would say is just make sure they are correct, and also that the person's name that you're putting on that form is going to be the person that we will contact about anything to do with the core fund. So make sure it's somebody relevant and that knows the application in case we need to check any details. And also if you change your details or something happens or the person moves on and you need somebody else to be the main contact, just let us know as soon as possible so that we can update our system. You have to describe the legal status of your organisation. So you have to be a community or voluntary organisation. You can be a company limited by guarantee. You can also be a community interest company, as long as you have a constitution or a memorandum and articles of association. And if you're a company, obviously you have a company number as well. So you would put in those two numbers there. And then you do describe your organisation. Now, try and describe it relevant to this fund, around community relations. So your organisation may do many, many, many things, but, you only really need to tell us what you do in terms of the good relations work that you do. And then the short description, which is the next one. This is the one, when you're writing it, just bear in mind, this is the one that we use to publish on the websites, and that's the one that we will, like in your letter of offer, it'll be the paragraph that'll say what you got funding for, or if we ever, do any publicity and we're talking about your organisation, that's how we're describing you. So just bear that in mind, when you're given a couple of sentences about your organisation.
This part is just really where you explain the work you're going to do. What we always say to everybody is you have up to 6 work areas, and we'd always ask people to try and be as strategic as you can with it. So I suppose what we would have seen in the past would people maybe put in 6 work areas, but once you get it beyond the 3rd work area, there's a lot of repetition coming in. Just don't feel you need, it'll be a better application if there's 6 work areas. It doesn't work that way, okay? So if you, we've had ones where it's been 1 work area, we've had ones where it's been 6. So just work with whatever's best for yourselves, okay? But again, it's just saying to be as strategic as possible as you can with the work, all right? See, as you're going through the application, see this button here about download as PDF. That's up there on all your pages, but I always recommend whenever you're coming towards the place where you're thinking about submitting your application form, that's a really useful button to hit. It just downloads all of your application into a PDF, so it's easy for you to read. And it's said to review all that information, make sure you're happy and content with it all. On the work plans there, you'll also see we have a list of core fund and programme themes and then programme outcomes. Download those 2 documents before you start filling it in, because it'll give you more of a sense for anybody who hasn't filled in the application before that the sort of kind of areas of work are the priorities that we have. Basically, anything there that has a wee red asterisk, that means it's mandatory. You must put something in there. But again, we always emphasise there's parts within this application where we're asking you to upload documents. So the system will tell you haven't uploaded a document, but it won't tell you you've uploaded the wrong document. So in those parts where we're talking about uploading management accounts and audited accounts or annual accounts, make sure you've got the documents uploaded in the right place, because the system will only say there's a document here, that's okay, but it won't tell you you've uploaded the wrong document or anything. So again, just be wary of that. What we're really looking for, first of all, is a work area kind of project title. Again, that's something that's useful. So it's just basically the project title, what you want to call your work there, nothing particularly complicated about it. This part here is just asking you, is there any other funders of this work at the minute? So some of you might be funded by somebody else and they're also supporting the work at the minute as well. Some, by the time you make this application, you might have some other funding applications and you don't know the outcome of it as yet. So look, you can use this as, you can use it as little or as much as you want to here. I suppose we're just trying to get a picture of who else is supporting the work, okay. And then we just ask you down below around which district areas will the work be covered. Again, that's more of a visual thing, and again, it's for somebody like Karina who's going to do the assessment. It just gives her a visual kind of where's the work going to take place. So under TBUC you have the 4 main headings, okay. So our children and young people, our shared community, our safe community, and then our cultural expression. So again, it's within the documentation, but just use whatever heading you think is most relevant to your work there, okay. So the outcomes that you get at the bottom will depend on what you have chosen here at the top of your T-book priority, all right? And then below the T-book end of things we're asking, we have, again, what I'll show you here, depending on what T-book theme you choose, you'll get different core fund themes here. We were just trying to sequence things, okay, based on what we've seen from work over the years. So again, that'll give you a number of basically themes to choose from. And ultimately the purpose of this is to get the T-box stuff and a wee bit more detail behind it, just what you're trying to do, okay? Okay, so this is just what you plan to do. Again, as I said, it's just a short description of the work you intend to do, and everybody interprets that differently. It's to help the person, Karina, whoever else doing the assessment, just to build up in their head, what do you want to do? You know, overall, what are you trying to achieve with this, or who you generally going to be working with, but we'll be looking for a wee bit more of that detail down below, okay? But it's just really a short kind of description of what you're wanting to do. Again, this is important, as I referred earlier to the welcome statements. This is your kind of needs analysis, just saying, why does this work take place? You can use the welcome statements, or you can look at any other kind of policy documents out there, but it's really just for you to kind of explain why you feel this work needs to be done. So it is particularly important. So what we'd also say to people is, you have the option here as well to upload any documents you think may help in kind of articulating why this work needs to take place. Some organisations, you might have your own internal research done, or previous evaluations, or any kind of other material to explain why the work needs to happen. So that's a place where you can upload any of those documents, okay? But if you're going to upload any other documents, for example, we have the Peace Monitor that came out here at the end of last year. It's basically, you really shouldn't need to update a document like that, but if you're going to refer to those sort of documents, just be specific in it about what you're trying to, any kind of issue within that's been highlighted, what you feel your work needs to address. It could be something more specific to a district council area that you're living in, or anything else like that, but again, it's just make kind of reference to that, okay? So again, it's just providing us with a clear kind of almost a kind of audit back to saying why this work needs to take place. This is what Karina was talking about earlier. So it's just this part, just this discuss, really just to highlight how this work aligns with the public policy and community relations issues. For example, T-book strategy, or as I said there, the Northern Ireland Executive's outcome delivery plan. I'd say that because the programme for government, it's only at consultation stage, we're too early to really kind of talk about that in any great detail. It's still that Executive's Outcomes Delivery Plan, which I was checking the other day, so it's still from 2019. It hasn't been updated, but that would be the main kind of doc. But again, it's just saying something about how your work links those kind of higher strategies, okay? This part is really kind of a risk analysis or a risk assessment, and it's just really saying about, do you foresee any issues that may impede progress, and how do you plan to respond to these? Okay, so for example, in the past it had been, thankfully we're beyond COVID, but people talked about how they respond. But, it can be some of the issues that everybody's facing, whether that's basically the kind of the funding environment, the political environment, the kind of economic environment, we're still living in the cost of living, or, wider kind of global events having an impact on us here, okay? So again, or kind of more localised kind of issues. Okay, so this is talking about, it's the who and the where. So it's who you're going to be working with in this box, okay? If you can provide us with a postcode of where that's going to happen, it's really useful. And then the council area. So that's just on the drop down there. And then just, again, an indication of the sort of numbers, females, males, and again, we're asking the whole PEL, CNR, again, that's just reflecting, this is the remit we still have, okay? And we know that this is not ideal because we have everybody else lumped under other identities. For anybody that's listened to me about this before, this system we have is limited to having 8 columns, and we can't have any more, so that's why it's done that way. But it will also say as well, we understand that you're making an application to us in November, that you might not know what your funding is going to be by, if everything starts by next April. So this is us trying to give your best estimate or sense of where the work's going to take place. And for anybody who is successful, we would always say, anything changing at the start of the year or during the year, just have a conversation with us, and we can kind of make the changes. So we do appreciate that this is a core fund, and you're having to apply elsewhere to project funds. So things that you plan to do might not, kind of. So I will say this, whenever I've been going through everybody's progress reports that everybody sends in, you'll have stuff that didn't happen, and you'll have other unanticipated stuff that did happen. And as long as it's generally within the remit that we have here, that's okay. So it's just to say that at the outset, we appreciate that things change. So we've just basically got 3 in there at the minute. Okay, folks, so what we'll say to everybody is, see here in the wee add button, you just hit that if you add another column in there. The kind of outcome stuff is more the kind of longer term stuff. So again, for Karina or whoever else doing the assessment, it gives them a sense of, okay, what is really the longer term aims of this work. Okay, you'll see the outcomes listed. Okay, so at the start of this part I showed you the thing where there's 2 documents you can download. So the outcomes, you'll see it's kind of on a green background and it's got 12 outcomes on it. It's really just depending on what T-box theme you used up above, it'll give you a different drop down of the sort of kind of breakdown of the work that we're talking about. Okay, so again, this is just where you give a bit of a sense of the longer term nature of this work or what you're wanting to achieve. You can say something there, more generally about the number of participants engaged in your programs, or some of you could be developing different resources, whether that's kind of reports or digital kind of resources, those sort of things, and then talking about what your dissemination strategy would be, and then any other kind of information you want to provide, and that's the usual kind of W5 questions about the who, what, where, when, and why. See this question I have here about how well you did it. This was all part of the discussion at the time around, I don't know if you remember, a number of years ago, everybody was talking about OBA, the dreaded OBA, outcomes-based approach or outcomes-based accountability, okay? So this was us doing our wee bit for that, okay? So it's just saying, look, if you were asked how would you assess or how would you measure the progress of the work you're doing, what sort of question would you ask somebody, okay? So there's a drop-down list there as well, and sort of questions you might want to ask, okay, folks? So look, it's just to let you know that, for example, I've just completed work area 1, so it'll only go to green or complete once it has everything up there. Basically, depending on the number of work areas you have, so we're going into work area 2. But for the time being, okay, you have to confirm with it. So at the minute, it's saying to you, require second work area template, and so all the stuff's down there. But if you just say no, okay, you save progress. You need to do that for every work area. Okay, so you need to manually tell the system, I don't need work area 3, 4, 5. So, but it's basically, you just need to confirm that, because unless it's saying complete there, it won't allow you to go on to the next part of it. Organisation management and development, and saying the sections is included to allow you to add any relevant details on activities that support your organisational infrastructure. And then it says include all activities that funding is being requested for and add rows as required. And this section is just about giving you, I suppose it's giving you the space to talk a wee bit more about, for example, if you're applying as part of a chief executive or director's post, it's really saying something about some of the other roles that you're having to fill that core funding will play some role in, okay? So again, this was just based on, generally what we were seeing coming in reports and things like that.
So the next bit then asks you about how would a core funding award be managed by your organisation. So we just want to know how, about staff management, supervision, performance review, arrangements, and also evidence of sound financial and reporting systems in place. So again, just give us a summary of that. So for the budget, you need to, first of all, we need to see the total employer costs of a post. So you need to fill in the top bit. So job title, the total salary of the person. So that's the 100% salary. And then how much national insurance and pension it's going to cost you as an employer to employ that person. And then you tell us how much percent you would like us to fund. And again, like I said earlier, it's up to 90%. And then it'll automatically calculate for you what that amount then calculates to. And you can apply up to 6 posts in total. Well, that's the space we're given for that. Don't feel you need to fill it. Some people just apply for the one and so on. So then when you come down to the next bit, you have to repeat this again. So again, you need to stick in the job title again, and then carry over that figure that was here, carry it down to here. So you just need to repeat that step again. And then you've got your running costs. And like I said earlier, these headings are fixed, they can't be changed, and that's the only headings that we will fund. And you just put in your costs there for that. It automatically will total it all up for you. This year, you can only apply up to 2 years. So then the next part is about the match funding. So this is where we're just asking you to tell us, how the remaining posts are being funded the 10%. So the next bit then just asks you to confirm that you're up to date with all your inland revenue payments and all your pension payments. You can only have a debt greater than the month. The way you're always a month behind with that, so it can only be up to 1 month. Okay, so although this is the last section, this is the section that you actually need to look at first when you're starting your application. And the reason being is this is the bit where you're asked to submit all your supporting documents. Don't leave this to the last thing to do and then realise that you don't have a strategic plan or you don't have a certain policy in place, because then you're going to be trying to, get this in order before the application. And if you're already sort of working last minute, then you have no chance of getting this in place before the deadline. Then we've got our strategic plan, and the strategic plan must correlate to the funding period. So the funding period that you're applying for is from April 25 to March 26. So if your strategic plan currently, say, ends in May 25, then that's obviously not part of that entire year's funding. So you will need to make sure that those dates are in line with the funding dates, because if they don't match, that is something that could potentially put you out of the eligibility checks. So the audited accounts are the accounts that get audited by your accountant, and they're the ones that would go under your charities commission. And then management accounts will be the day-to-day management accounts that you will produce probably on a monthly basis to your board, just showing all your income and expenditure, your reserves, your liabilities, your assets. And that's more for financial control, internal financial management, we'll call it. So they don't need to be externally verified by anybody. They're probably just generated by your finance manager and your CEO and then present it to your board on a monthly basis. But they are two different sets of accounts, and we will want to see both. So we do, because usually an audit, a set of accounts is more historic, and based on the previous year, whereas your management accounts are giving us a much more up-to-date picture of your organisation. Your organisational chart, so that can just be, your structure of your organisation, how the core funding roles fit within the organisation, a list of your board and your committee members. And then, like I said earlier, one of the policies, so community relations policy, good relations policy, or equality policy. So just make sure every one of them documents are uploaded. And if you work with children or vulnerable adults, we also expect a safeguarding policy as well. So if you said yes, then it'll say you need to upload your safeguarding file there too. Some key points to consider then. So read thoroughly through the guidance notes, and they're also on that portal introduction. So read through them before starting to complete the application. And like I said, look at your Section 10 documents first and foremost before putting anything on paper. When considering the community relations value of your proposal, use the key principles which are listed in your guidance notes. And they are like, the work must be intentional, that it must identify a good relations need. It should evidence what the target outcomes it will use to measure the impact. Its unique contribution to good relations, that it must be cost effective, and that you have financial competence to do the project or to manage the grant. Do not assume prior knowledge of your work, and make sure that you've uploaded all the documentation. I can't say that enough. And like I said, plain English is fine. Don't be using all these buzzwords and things because you think that's what a good application says. It doesn't. The plainer the English, the better. bullet points, easy to read. And like I said, there's a difference between management accounts and annual accounts, and we will require both of those. The submission deadline will be Friday, the 15th of November at 4 o'clock. And we will not accept documents forwarded to us separately. So those supporting documents, they must come in with the application, and we don't accept them if they're supplied to us after the deadline. So even though you have your application in, you can't come to us then on Monday saying, oh, I forgot to submit my governing document, can you take it? The answer will be no, unfortunately. Assessment of the applications will take place between November and January. And then all the recommendations will go to our panel the week commencing Monday the 24th of February.